Joining me now, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, a retired U.S. Marine intelligence officer, and now the president of KIP, a strategic risk management firm. Hal, the U.S. Navy increasingly concerned over China's construction of Haifa port. Explain what the security issues here are.
Well, among other things, Michelle, Haifa is the best port for the Navy to do port calls in. It has certain characteristics about it that favor security. It also allows for some deeper draft vessels to come in there that can't go into some other ports in Israel. So there's a lot of reasons why the U.S. Navy has always favored going to Haifa. It's the best port to go to. The problem with the Chinese taking over the port, though, is what is sometimes termed Chinese intelligence expansionism. In other words, they have the port, they control the port, and their ability to proliferate various intelligence collection systems, whether it's technical means of collection or human intelligence, is vastly expanded because they control the port, which there's a lot of things on a U.S. Navy vessel that we just prefer that other countries don't know about. And so it makes it very difficult for us to use that port or continue to use that port for Navy ports of call.
It's not just the ports, Hal. Israel's deepening relationship with China in terms of technology and economic interests seems at large incompatible with American interests. Certainly, Israel perhaps is sharing some of its technological advancements with China. Why is Israel even putting itself in this position? I mean, how did this even come about that the Chinese could be controlling one of the major ports in Israel? I mean, is this not surprising that this decision was accepted in the first place?
Michelle, it is a little bit surprising. The decision was made back in 2015. But when you look at the growth of Israeli-Chinese trade, it's growing. Even though U.S. trade with the United States is much, much larger, about 3 to 4 times, maybe 5 times larger, depending on how you do the math and whether you count Hong Kong as part of China or separate, in comparison to Chinese trade with Israel. The trade with the U.S. is larger, but Chinese trade with Israel is growing at about 10 times more per year than U.S. trade. So there's a little shift in terms of the balance of power, if you will, economic power. Also, things have changed dramatically with China across the board, and that China is now emerging as our primary peer competitor, if you will, around the world. And so we're having to look at China in ways that we've never looked at China before, and you can't look at Israel in isolation because the issues in the South China Sea and elsewhere around the globe, the new Silk Road initiative, these are all things we have to kind of take into a whole cloth approach.
Yeah, and China is now Israel's second largest trading partner. To your point, those ties have been growing. But what is Israel to do with China being such a big economic power? Does it just shun China? It can't turn down all the investment opportunities from China, but at the same time, it doesn't want a relationship that comes with so many strings attached and complications with regarding the number one ally, the U.S. So what's the balance here for Israel?
I don't know what the exact balance is. I think they're going to have to relook at the Haifa port deal. That may have been, say, a bridge too far. But with that said, the United States hasn't turned its back to Chinese investment here. Most of what used to be the Long Beach Naval Base is now owned by Costco, and it's a Costco facility. So Chinese maritime investment overseas is going to continue. It's going to happen in a lot of places, and I think we're just going to have to find some sort of happy medium, if you will, some sort of way to balance that with our very legitimate intelligence, counterintelligence, and security requirements to do port calls with U.S. Navy vessels.
And Hal, it's not just the relationship with the U.S. that's complicated for Israel, keeping in mind that China is also an ally of Iran. And that's a point that the former Mossad chief cautions, that should China be given a choice, it's going to choose Iran over Israel. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. The strategic relationship with Iran is much more important for China than it is than their strategic relationship with Israel. Israel, to them, I believe, is just an opportunity to expand their influence, to expand their economic influence, and expand their intelligence capabilities in a different part of the world. But Iran is really the strategic relationship they're looking at much closer. Iran has a lot of resources they're interested in. oil probably being the biggest one. And so I see if as the tensions grow, there might be a shift, and there might be a shift that's pulled by China to that direction too. So it's not just us looking at it. It's not just the Mossad and the Israeli government looking at it, but China may want to shift its attention elsewhere if tensions grow.
Hal, thanks as always, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer.
Thank you.